I want to tell you a story today from the Gospel of John, chapter 2. It's a poignant story, one you know. It's iconic. It's classic. It's the day after that Jesus found Philip in Galilee and called him with these words, "Come and follow me." Before that, he had called Andrew, and he had spoken to Simon and changed his name to Cephas or Peter. And all of these people went and found somebody else and brought him to Jesus. That's the Christian way. You go find somebody. Go find somebody that you pour your life into and that you love and that love you, or you're developing a relationship with, and show them the Jesus way, the Jesus life. And so Jesus found Philip in chapter 1, and Philip went and found his friend named Nathanael. And when Jesus saw Nathanael, you remember Jesus said, "This is a man of integrity." And Nathanael said, "How do you know me? I've never met you before." And Jesus told Nathanael, "Before your friend Philip ever called you, I saw you under a fig tree. I know where you came from. I know all about you," he implied. And Nathanael followed as well. Now, it's the next day. They're still in Galilee, and they go to a little city named Cana, C-A-N-A. I've been there a few times, but this past year in 23, early 23, some of us from this church went to Cana of Galilee. Jesus began his ministry in this little city. There's a church there that celebrates the beginning of Jesus' ministry with his first miracle, which I want to talk to you about today. It's in Cana of Galilee that Jesus turned water into wine. It's in Cana of Galilee now that people renew their wedding vows, and I was blessed to preside over the renewal vows of several people in our party from the middle Atlantic states of this country and in our own church, and with Karen and I. A blessed time. It's always good to renew our vows to each other and to God. And so we gathered in a little auxiliary room of that church, and we shared Holy Communion, and we shared wine from Cana, where Jesus turned the water into wine. But this is the story. Jesus and his disciples and his mother were invited to this wedding. And it wasn't long after they had been there and celebrating the bride and the groom that Jesus' mother comes to him and says, "They have run out of wine. They've run out." And he said, "It's not my time, Mom. It's not my time." So finally, before desperation set in, I'm sure, Jesus goes to the servants that were attending the wedding, and he saw 6 of these great big stone jars. They each would hold about 20 to 30 gallons of water. Normally, these stones were used, these stone pots, jars were used for people to reach in here and get some water, draw some water, and they used this to draw water to wash their feet, wash their hands. They didn't have Kohler or Moen faucets. You know what I mean? They didn't even have a garden hose. But they had these pots who were filled from some body of water. This was for ceremonial cleansing. So before you worship, you should come in clean. Don't just come in and bounce in like just from work and not make any preparation. All worship involves preparation. So it's all about water in these pots. And Jesus told the servants, fill these things up to the brim. Fill them with water. And I guess they knew to do that, or part of it may have already had water in it, but they did as he said. But before he told them this, Jesus' mother had come by and said to all these servants, whatever he tells you to do, just do it. So when he came and said, fill them up with water, they were ready to do as he said. And they filled them up with water. Preparation for a miracle. Jesus then had the second request of them. And he said, go and dip out some of the water. And I want you to pour it into the goblets, the vessels, the glasses, the clay that they're drinking from at the tables. And this is what happened. He said, now whether it's water that went in here or wine, we don't know. We do know that from the time it left the pot to the time it got to the table, there was a divine intervention, and it turned into the best wine. That the master of the ceremonies who took it first said, wow, you saved the best wine till last. Where have you been? Where has this been? That's the simple story. And that's how Jesus began his ministry. Now, I want to break it down into 5 major principles. I want to extrapolate some meaning for your life and for my life. What does it mean for Jesus to do a miracle with us? All of us just finished singing, I'm nothing without you. If you don't come, we're toast. That wasn't the words we sang, but you got the meaning, right? We can't do it without you. I know some great people who've made a mess of their lives. I think they're good people, but they can't get it together. You know people like that? I have family members, they just cannot get it together. My heart hurts for them. People come in here every week. They're lonely and lost. They probably are not going out in flagrant sin. They're not trying to anger God or anybody else. They have a bent. We all have a bent. We're bent to sinning, prone to wander, prone to leave the God we love. How do we get it together? How can God do a miracle in me? Well, it starts with the first principle, and that's the invite. The next day, there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana of Galilee, and Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. If you are going to have the blessing of God, if your water is going to turn to wine, you have to invite Jesus. Have you had a moment in your life where you said, I want you in my life. I want you to come in my home. I want you to come in my body. I want you to take my simple life, my water, and I want you to transform it the way only you can do. Who knows the formula? Wineries don't know the formula. If they knew the formula, they'd turn on the water spigots and fill all the barrels in their warehouses with water. Yeah, but Jesus knows the formula. It requires for a human being and for water to become wine, it requires divine intervention. You know where you came from? I had our tech team put on our sign a few weeks ago. I'm not sure it's still there or not, but this statement just hit me. And I remember it from my own life. You and you and you came from God. God thought you up. You're not a mistake. You came from God. And the only way you can have a life of fruitfulness, sweetness, flavor, and delight, the only way you can be a blessing to other people is to have Jesus in your life. But the only way Jesus is going to come in, he's not going to barge in. He's coming by invitation. Invite him in. You know something, folks? I believe the moment. Again, I'm sorry, John, but I go back to the testimony that John White Spunner gave yesterday about his 97-year-old father to hundreds of people. People all over Mobile and Baldwin County and probably other places were there. And John shared this story that they were in a meeting in Atlanta, he and his father, 1996. And in their hearts, they both felt the tug of God to make a complete surrender and invite Jesus in a new way. And they both said, Blacksher, 97 years old, said, and he was a businessman. He's known all over Mobile. He said, this is the most important decision I ever made in my life. John said, my life has never been the same. And I can say the same thing since I knelt at an altar of prayer as a boy and gave my life to Christ. Have I failed? You bet. Have I missed it sometimes? Yes. But I invited him to take control of my life. I invited him to help me clean up my messes. I invited me to teach me how to live and love and lead. And he's doing that today. But sometimes we get a little ahead of Jesus, like mamas do. Daddies do. We all do. And in essence, this is how I read that scripture. Mary, his mother, comes to him and says, do something. Do something, Jesus. Do something. They're out of wine. They're out. Now, I want you to, one of the principles of this story is the word out. Jesus' mother told him, they have no more wine. Dear woman, he said, that's not my problem. I don't know, well, I do know that every one of us know that feeling of run out. Don't you hate it when you're grilling hamburgers on a grill and all of a sudden the flame goes out? And you got these bottles of gas, propane gas, and you don't have an extra bottle. You got to stop the cooking and go to the place to get another bottle of gas. I hate that. Have you ever been so busy, too busy to stop and get gasoline in your car? Have you ever at the end of the month come down and said, look at my checkbook. I'm out. I'm overdrawn. More has gone out than has come in. I'm O-U-T. I have no more. No moss. There's no moss. That's Spanish for something like that. No more. There comes a time in our life where we run out. I don't care how much money you got. There's going to be a day it runs out because you're going to get to the end of your life and you're going to need God to help you. Because money won't buy some things. There's going to be a day the doctor looks at you and says, your health has run out. There's going to be a day where maybe people walk out. It happens. Here's a big celebration. And how embarrassing. How embarrassing it is to be depleted when you're needed. I don't have any more energy, folks. I don't have any more resources. I've caught nothing, no fish. I have no business deals. The water, the well is dry. And you know what? This is a very good place to be. The Bible tells us this is a very good place to be because our extremity, when we get to the end of ourselves, it's God's opportunity. This is a principle that you learn when you come to recovery of any problem, any hurt or hang up or habit. You've got to come to this place of extremity. I'm sick and tired. You ever been there? I'm out of patience. I'm out of energy. I'm out of doing it. I don't have any more ideas. I have no more initiative. Religion doesn't work. Oh my goodness doesn't work. I need help. I need a divine intervention. But here's a principle. Emptiness is the soil of fruitfulness. Jesus says to his mother, it's not ready for me. There's a right time. There is a time. Now, some of us get on our knees and we pray. You know, if we have a problem on Monday, we will pray on Monday, God, we need you to come through. We've just come from the doctor. We've just looked at the bank account. We've just lost a friend. We've just gone through this problem. We need you to come through now. Will you answer my prayer? And you know what God says? Not my time. Not my time. That's hard to hear, isn't it? And most of the time when he says that, it's just silence. Silence. The day turns to night. It's dark. You don't feel anything. It's wonderful to have good feelings. And nothing wrong with that. We all want that. We want the affirmation of God. But there are times we don't feel it. It's not his time. Mary has pointed out the problem, but Jesus says, not my time. There are two words in the New Testament Greek for time. One of them is chronos, from which we get a watch, Chronos time is human time. It's world time. It's earth time. Chronos. Your time, my time. There's another word that appears to be time, but it's a different word, and it's kairos time. And kairos time is just the right time. It is God's time. It is when God chooses to act. In the fullness of time, kairos, the Bible says Jesus was born just at the right time. He came into the world. And sometimes we're on chronos time and God's on kairos time. And he says, it's not my time. There's a time for water, Barry, and there's a time for wine. There's a time for no miracles. There's a time for no answer and no intervention and no divine voice, just water. And that's a hard time. It's hard to be in charge of your life or anything else when you say, I'm out, God. I'm totally out. The reserves are gone. My money, my health, my friends, my initiative, and my energy. And he says, wait upon the Lord. Just wait on me till I choose. Now, we could talk. I'd love to just share around the table with you about this principle, about how hard it is to wait for God to answer a prayer for a child, for God to answer a prayer for a friend, for God to answer a prayer that you prayed. But he has that prerogative, you know. The divine prerogative is to say when he will do it and how he will do it. It's not for us to tell him, you have to do it this way. You can do it, Lord, through a doctor. You can do it without a doctor. You can do it through olive oil, frankincense, and myrrh on my head, or you can do it through chemotherapy. It's the divine prerogative. And he uses all the above. He will use the wisdom and education of others. And he will use the simplicity of a simple prayer. Next principle is, it's the invite, the word out, so significant. And when you're out, though you may be out of resources, you're not out of his eyesight. You're not out of his love. You're not out of his presence. He sees you. He knows you. That's comfort for me today. He's guiding me. The clouds are covering it up a little bit. His face I can't see, but I believe he's there. The next principle is listen. Listen and do it. His mother said to the servants, this is crucial, whatever he tells you, do it. Obedience is a precursor to blessing. Let me ask you a question. I say this all the time. Hearing the voice of God is the most important thing in your life. And here's the question. Are you listening to God? How do you listen to God? Have you learned the sacred practice of listening? Do you listen to wise voices? Like Proverbs 15 tells us, knowledge flows from spring water, flows like spring water from the wise. But fools are leaky faucets, dripping nonsense. Do you listen to him? And here's the last question. Do you remember what he told you? And there are times that what he says doesn't make sense. I'll show you. The next principle is jars. We all have jars. Some of us are jars. Some of us we're all pots. And there are things to go in our pots. We're all receptacles of something. We all are receiving. Listen to this. Standing nearby were 6 water pots, 6 water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing, and each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus told the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And when the jars had been filled, he said, "Now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies." I don't think Mary said it, but it stands to be repeated. Just do what he said. But I can see and I can hear the mind of some of those servants saying, this doesn't make sense. You want us to fill the pots with water, and then you want us to dip it out and take it and put it in the goblets. This doesn't make sense. Often, when we are told to put the water in the wine glasses, we say, now listen, I know better than that. I'm smarter than that. That's too simple. Your logic, God, does not make sense to me. Have you ever said that in essence? And quit praying, quit asking, because you just don't understand this simple logic. Just do it. So, okay. Here we go again. Just do it. Now, take it to the master of ceremonies. And you know what the master of ceremonies said? Verse 9, and this is the last principle, and it's the word best. B-E-S-T. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water, there was now wine, not knowing where it came from, but the servants knew. He called the bridegroom over and he said, a host always serves the best wine first. Then when everyone has had a lot to drink and maybe they're a little inebriated, and they don't know good wine from bad wine, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now. Where'd this come from? How'd this happen? This is the best. I used to hear this from my teachers as a child. Good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best. It actually came from St. Jerome in the 4th century. Good, better, best. Now, some of us are content with good. We're content with a good cup of cold water. It is good. Nothing wrong with good, cold water. And we settle for that. No miracle there. But if you want the best in life, you've got to invite Jesus. You've got to get to a point of desperation. You've got to wait for his time. You've got to listen to him and do what he tells you to do. You got to fill the jar with whatever he wants you to do, whatever he wants you to know. If you need to go to school, if you need to be mentored by someone who has loved Jesus for a long time, then fill your life with that. Get around people who expect God to work. And then you will know the best. I don't want to settle for second best. I don't want to settle for good or better. I want best. I want his best. I want his perfect will to be done in my life. Do you?